It is good to see you here this morning. Have you ever been told something which at the time you realized was significant, but as time has gone on, you've realized that what you were told has actually deepened in its significance? It's become more and more meaningful and more impactful. Julie and I had this experience a few years ago. And we had been told by people that having a baby would change your life. Maybe, maybe not. We weren't sure. We assumed it would probably have some impact. And so this little bundle arrived. You can probably see the resemblance to Sophie. She came out praying and angry. Not sure if those were connected or not. But we were in hospital, and one of the midwives was there with us, and I was giving Sophie her first bath. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to change a nappy. I was looking after this little person. Juliet had a Caesar, so she was on the bed. And I was trying to figure out how to wash this tiny thing without drowning it, while still cleaning it, without hurting it, without making it too hot, not too cold. All the things that you're thinking about. And this midwife came in, and she said, "Well, good news, this is the easy part. Wait till you take them home." And I was like, "Oh, great." and I thought, okay, so that just means that when we take her home, it's going to be no help, no midwives, no nurses, no nice hospital room where you can have people bring you food and all that kind of stuff. It was just that we'd be doing it on our own. But as time has gone on, I've come to realize that what she meant was when you take them home, it's not actually the beginning. It's actually this long, continuous journey of raising little human beings who become bigger human beings, who become bigger human beings. And what she'd said has become more and more significant as Sophie and our other girls have gotten older. And it's starting to make sense, what she said, slowly. And I wonder if that's a little bit how Moses felt. If he felt the same way. We're going through a series looking at this guy who was called by God to lead the people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And Moses reluctantly agrees. And last week, Jared looked at the story of the 10 plagues, where God has this face-off with the gods of Egypt and proves that he is more powerful, that he is stronger than their gods. And from that, we kind of move into this experience which they had connected with the last plague, plague number 10. And this was a plague, as you know, on the firstborn of each home. If you've got your Bibles, I want to invite you to open up to Exodus chapter 12. Because in this last plague, God gives really specific instructions to the Israelites about what they should do. And I'm going to have some of the verses up here. If you have a blue Bible, pages 57, we're pretty much staying on there for the whole of our time together. Exodus chapter 12, Lord says to Moses and Aaron, this is what's going to happen, and this is what I want you to do. I want you to select a lamb, and this happens on the 10th day of this month, which is going to be the first month of your calendar. Select a lamb, and I want you to keep it with you for 4 days. You need to look after it. You need to care for it. This lamb has to be perfect. It has to be without blemish. It has to be a 1-year-old male. And this becomes part of your home. And then, after you've selected it, on the 4th day, I want you to kill it. You will slaughter it at twilight. And then I want you to take the blood of this lamb. I want you to spread it on your doorposts, on your lintel, on the sides. of your frames, and then you're going to have a supper, and you're going to eat this lamb roasted, whole, with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. And as you are doing that, I want you to remember that you need to stay inside. You've put the blood on the doorpost, you're eating your lamb, you need to stay inside that home until I tell you that you can leave. And if you are looking at this for the very first time, you would probably think that is a really unusual set of instructions. That is a bizarre list of things that God tells these people to do. And nowadays, if you heard that, you would probably going, what do I do? How's the RSPCA going to respond to that? What does this look like? This is going to be awkward. What are people going to think? But I wonder if Moses thought, God, why this particular set of things? This is so unusual. This is so strange. And perhaps, maybe because Moses knew what was coming, he realized, okay, God, you know what's coming. You've told us what we need to do to prepare for that. You might have noticed in the news recently, there was a hurricane in Tampa. And I was actually over there beginning of this year at a conference and was in touch with some people over the past week who were in there, and they were preparing for what was about to come. And the government had issued instructions for like 70 counties or something, which is like 7 million people, to actually evacuate. They told people what was coming, they told people what to expect, what the storm surge would be, what the winds were going to be, when it was going to make landfall, what to prepare for, where you could evacuate to. And they gave them all these sets of instructions because they knew what most likely was going to be coming. And so God gives these instructions to Moses and to the Israelites, and this is why. Chapter 12, verse 23 says this: when the Lord goes through the land to strike down the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the top and sides of the doorframe and will pass over that doorway. And he will not permit the destroyer to enter your house and strike you down. If they chose not to follow these instructions, what was the consequence? They would die. But if they chose to follow these instructions, the consequence was that God said, I will protect you. You'll be safe. You'll be secure. Because God knew what was coming. He knew their situation, and he wanted to prepare them for what was about to hit them. He wanted them to be safe when the destroyer hit town. And I'm not sure what kind of week you've had or where you're sitting at in your life right now, but you might be able to resonate a little bit with that because it feels like there is a destroyer in your town. There's a destroyer in your neighborhood, in your home, in your family, in your relationships, in your finances. There's a destroyer maybe in your body. And you desperately want what God has told the Israelites. You want this protection that God is able to give you through that and in that and bring you out of it. And the Passover story, as we look at it, it reveals this reassuring truth that whatever you're going through, God knows. He sees you. He knows you. He knows what you're experiencing. He knows the troubles. He knows the challenges. He knows all of that. He knows what the destroyer is capable of. And he wants to deliver you from that just like he did the Israelites. And maybe that will be in the form of some undeniable miracle. Maybe it'll be in the form of the reassurance and support of a friend. Maybe it'll be through the help of someone who knows this aspect of life and can walk you through that. Maybe it'll be through the strength and commitment that he gives you to do hard things and persevere and stick at it. But definitely in the long run, he won't fail. He won't give up. He does protect. And he will do what he says he'll do. And I think this is where we need to be reminded of this story in Exodus. This is what the Passover teaches us. God tells Moses before the event takes place, before the passing over even takes place, he says, this is going to happen, but I'm going to be with you now, and I'm going to be with you into the future. And that's why God calls this Passover. He actually gives it a name. He calls it a lasting ordinance. An ordinance is like a memorial or a practice that you do. In chapter 12, verse 25, he says, after he's given them the instructions, he says, when you enter the land the Lord will give you as he promised, observe this ceremony, practice it, repeat it. Observe this ceremony, and when your children ask you, what does this ceremony mean to you? Then tell them, it's the Passover, sacrifice to the Lord, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. So this was something that they were going to do every year. They were going to do this practice. They were going to do the lamb, do the bread, do the bitter herbs, do all of this so that they could remember what God had done. But I don't think remembering what God had done was the end goal. See, when you remember what God has done, I think it reminds you of who God is. I think that's what God's trying to do. He wants you to know, hey, this is me. This is who I am. Because of who I am, this is what I do. This is what I did. When was the last time you went to a birthday celebration, or you had a birthday celebration and people came over to your place? Might have been earlier this year. It might still be on the way. I can't see Hernan. He had a birthday this week. All right, so when you have a birthday, this is both for young and old, and people come around, it's a celebration of your birthday. When they celebrated the Passover, they're celebrating the passing over. When you celebrate your birthday, or you go to someone else's place to celebrate their birthday, who has gone to a birthday party where you sit down and they bring out photos of when they were born? And you talk about the birth, and you talk about what happened and how it went and what that day was like. Anyone had a birthday party like that? No. What do you do at a birthday party? What do you celebrate? You celebrate your age, but you celebrate the person who is turning that age, isn't it? You don't go to celebrate what happened on the day they were born. Yeah, maybe that's part of it. But essentially you go there and you celebrate because this person matters, and the fact that they are alive is a good thing. That they are with you, that is what you go to celebrate. You don't go to celebrate how they were born. You celebrate the fact that they were born and that they are there with you right now. And so when you think about the Passover, is it about what, or is it about who? What God did, but it's also about who God is. What God did reveals who God is. It's a reminder that God did what he did so they could celebrate and worship who he is. Look what happens after he tells them to, hey, keep this as an annual thing that I want you to do. Look what the people did. They bow down and worship. You don't bow down and worship because of a birthday as such. They weren't bowing down and worshiping just because God had done something. They were bowing down and worship because as they worship, they are worshiping the person who God is. And so this is this beautiful reminder that through the blood of this lamb, they were delivered, they were freed from slavery, they are restored, they are renewed, because that is what God is. He is good. He does good. It comes out of who he is. But Moses probably didn't see all that. He probably didn't look into all that and realize all of that. He probably didn't really fully understand just yet why a lamb was chosen and why it had to be perfect and why the blood mattered. Not yet. We'll probably dig into that a little bit more as the series goes on. But the Passover was it was a placeholder for something better. It was a shadow for a greater exodus that was to come. Go forward 1,300 years, and Jesus is celebrating the Passover, just as the Bible called. He's celebrating the Passover with his disciples. They're in this upper room, and he was carrying out this lasting ordinance that God said, you need to do this in generations. But before he did, he gave us another ordinance, another practice, another experience that he wants us to partake of and do and remind us of. And that was foot washing. And we're going to do this shortly. But foot washing was a way for Jesus to show that he loved his disciples. Not only did he love them, but he was actually willing to humble himself, get down on his knees, and do something that only servants were supposed to do. And the ironic thing is, humility can't exist at the same time with pride. You can have one or the other, but you can't have both. And humbling experiences, and I think this is part of what Jesus was doing, humbling experiences remind us that we are human, that we are imperfect, that we make poor decisions sometimes, that we hurt other people, that by our actions, by our words, what we do to others causes them to feel pain and suffering. Humbling experiences encourage us to seek forgiveness, to reconcile, to restore, and they give us opportunity to serve each other and follow, ultimately, Jesus' example. As a church, we want to be following Jesus. We want to be obeying what he's called us to do. And when he gave this beautiful symbol of foot washing, it was his way of encouraging us to do the same thing in humility.